Welcome back to another episode with Fight Night Picks. As always, we're brought to you by SimBody. Vertiball is now SimBody. If you head on over to their website, simbody.com, you're going to get all the great products that you know and love, including the SimBody Vertiroller and the Vertiball that you have seen most likely here in studio. Look at that. Place it, lock it, attach it, Vertiball, all sorts of great stuff over there if you want to roll out those old tired muscles and you don't want to go with that old lacrosse ball. They're also coming out with that very new product that you can see right in front of you. And if I head on over to my cart, look at that. I've already got a Vertiball over there. Little bit of a deal right there. And if you hit the try for 60 days risk-free, use the promo code FNP, you're going to get 20% off your order with that code FNP at simbody.com. You're really helping out another local company here in New Brunswick, Canada. Can't wait for it. The new name, SimBody at simbody.com. And as we always say, let's get into it.
You know the guys from Fight Night Picks for their weekly UFC previews and predictions, live shows like Question Mark Kicks and the Sidekick. Thanks to your support, they're adding a new show to the channel. If you're an MMA fan, you're going to want to join in the action of Dana White's Contender series. So as they always say, let's get into it.
Oh boy, and just like that, it's a weird transition, but we're back. We're set for Contender Series week number 5. It's headlined by Eduardo Neves taking on Mick Parkin. You got Michael there, you got Mick everywhere else. Matt, so glad that we could be back. Illness. It really did kind of throw a wrench into our plans on the weekend with question mark kicks, with the overall side kicks. So we had to miss it, but we were not going to leave the people hanging with the big time Dana White's Contender Series show. Matt, I know you're excited about this week. There's a lot of really good prospects, 5 total fights here. And if we switch it on back to last week, well, son of a gun. Now I'm 3-1 with these stupid things. I mean, my goodness, I just wasn't able to get it going in that one. Hey, 1/3 of the way there with the judges though, right? Leitchi versus Cowan, but ends up split decision win for Cowan. Ultimately, all 5 of the winners on the show, Ribovics, Ribeiro, Johnson, Cowan, and Saidikov were winners of contracts. Matt, it was a good week last week, and I know, again, you're really looking forward to this one. I see the one and only saying in the comments section, can't wait to see one half the Twin Dragons fight. That's right. You got Wang-Kim. You got Josh. John doesn't get to fight this week, but yeah, there's a lot of really good fights on this one. I'm really looking forward to this week.
Yeah, this is an interesting card because I feel like on some of the other Contender Series cards that we've had, especially this season, there sort of is that one name that you kind of expect to get signed or expect to get a lot of the notoriety. And then, of course, they'll sign 2, 3, 4 more fighters off the card and you can get excited about them. But it does feel like there's just a good level of talent all throughout this entire card. I'm really excited for the co-main event. We were both talking about that a lot before we started filming. That should be a really fun one between Darius Flowers and Amiran Gogoladze. And like you said, Josh Wang-Kim versus Cameron Saaiman, like that's going to be a really fun fight between 2 guys who they might be pretty young now in their careers, but they could develop into really fun and promising talents in the future.
Yeah, and this really is one of those weeks where, you know, when I'm trying to make the picks for this one, and obviously I get my first one wrong last week, but it's trying to go with who is the most UFC ready fighter on the entire card. And out of these 10 fighters, I kind of had a harder time this week trying to pick just one. So it really is a difficult one. When you look at the overall landscape of things, you have a strawweight fight, one at 135. You got flyweight, welterweight, and heavyweight considered. I mean, we've seen some good heavyweight fights. Obviously, you had Cortez Acosta at heavyweight earn a contract early on. He's got a fight already booked against the Mountain, Jared Van Dara in the UFC. So you could see either Neves or Parkin earning a contract on this season. But as we always do with the show, we want to hit up that comment section, Matt. I mean, we've got Reinhardt saying Cameron Saaiman got it in the bag. Kimlum's to engage in the grappling, and Saaiman has him covered grappling-wise, IMO. Rob Lawrence is saying, let's go Neves, KO. And UFC 205 saying fade the dragon. Matt, I have a friend. His last name is spelled the same way as Eduardo Neves, but he pronounces it Neves, and the rest of his family's from Portugal. So it's real mind F. That's what it is in my brain right now. Having a hard time trying to keep that in mind. But what we always do on this show, we start at the bottom of the card, go all the way to the top. We give you a preview of each of these fights, and then on this Contender Series show, we offer up one pick. I don't know what Matt's pick is. Matt doesn't know what my pick is, and we do it at the very end. So we start at the first fight. Denise Gomes taking on Rayanne Amanda. And Matt, this one's a little bit tricky because if you try and find Rayanne Amanda on the socials, it's all over the place. It's Rayanne dos Santos. It really is a mixed bag. But if you look at it for Amanda, 9 of her 11 wins are by finish, 7 of them by submission. She has experience fighting in Canada. And I remember saying this, Matt, when Lupe Godinez was coming into the UFC. I went, hey, she fought that gritty old Lindsay Garbat. And you were like, forget about Lindsay Garbat. Rayanne fought her twice. 1 win, 1 loss, both really tight fights there. If you look at it, the last of the fights was in Peterborough, the gateway to the Kawarthas. The Canadians are going nuts for this stuff out there. And I gotta really pander to our audience. But when I do look at this for her, Matt, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, she's trained out of Marajao Brothers, Team Figueiredo in the past. She's trained in Texas as well. And I found it interesting because both of these fighters, Gomes and Rayanne, they both have significant others that play a major part in MMA. And if you look at it for Rayanne, what is it? Her fiance is Colton Anglin, who was on Dana White's Contender Series last year, got knocked out by Manuel Torres. But hey, Torres went to the UFC and knocked out Frank Camacho, so that's pretty cool. And if you do look at it for her, very diverse skill set. Again, she's going to lean on her jiu-jitsu. For Denise Gomes, I mentioned that kind of connection, if you will. Carol Hossa for her, and they both train out of Parana Vale Tudo down in Brazil. Jessica Andrade at the gym. For Gomes, she is a barber. She does a damn fine job. And if I was looking for a fade with a little bit of, like maybe even if I was going to go for like a mullet with like the lines in the side, she'd be the perfect one to do it. But you love her fighting style.
I'd go to Devison Figueiredo personally.
Well, that much is true. She very much is a very good Muay Thai fighter in MMA. And I absolutely love her striking defense. She really is a good defensively minded fighter, but she will throw it all out on the line as well. I think this is going to be a fun fight. For Gomes, you look at it, her overall body of work, 1 fight at bantamweight, 1 fight at strawweight, the other 4 are at flyweight. So she made the weight successful. Both these women did. We only had one kind of tight call this week. What were you thinking of this matchup? I think it's a really good fight.
It is a really good fight, but there's something we have to say before we go that much further. For Rayanne Amanda, let's just look at her last 4 wins, shall we? Over an 0-1 fighter, over an 0-5 fighter, over 2 fighters making their debuts in professional MMA. That is suspect as all get out. Like, that would be like just doing really good in a YMCA game and then having the Raptors give you a call and being like, hey, you want to be Bo Cruz for real? I just don't love it when somebody has that level of experience, because you look at her record, it's 11-5. And honestly, that is a very experienced fighter for a Dana White Contender Series type of event. But when you look at her last 4 wins, like, she could easily be 9-5. Because let's be honest, most people could beat the level of competition that she's been able to beat throughout her last few fights. I do like her well-rounded style. I think she has a unique way of grappling. She likes to do it from the clinch a lot. And against Gomes, that's probably going to be her best path to victory, because Gomes is able to put it together on the feet quite effectively. So I think it will be an interesting fight, but I definitely think the UFC kind of wants Denise Gomes to win this one. She's 5 years younger. She is the more exciting of the two. And I could see her having a decent run in the UFC if she is able to get there.
Yeah, and it is one of those fights. I mean, we've seen it in the past. Maeda Buena Silva. Can we get the push? Oh, now there's 2 fighters from the same gym in the UFC like that. So it'll be interesting to see how this one plays out. If you look at the odds for this fight, Denise Gomes comes in as the favorite, open -225, -265 right now. For Rayanne Amanda, open +185, she's +212 as it stands. And if we have a look at the Tapology votes, Matt, I'm just going to go right to it. 90% of 559 total voters going with Gomes to get the win. So a lot of people feeling that Gomes is going to be able to get it done. Obviously, she comes from a very strong gym. She has that good striking background. She also has the much higher level of competition. And if you look at it in her last fight, it was a big time spot at Invicta FC 46 earlier on this year in March. Co-main event against Melania Dudieva. There we go. Got him. But the Russian who had fought in the UFC in the past. Now, was she able to get it done against your former UFC bantamweight champ, Juliana Pena? No, she wasn't. She could beat the first round of that fight. But again, still a good level of competition. So to head on over into the comment section, Matt, I do see it over there. Rob is saying Denise, I guess. And the one and only saying, did y'all see that Erisson missed weight? We'll get to that one. He missed weight on the first go through. They gave him an hour to cut the remaining bit, and he was able to make it. So our next fight, Matt, we have one half of the Twin Dragons. Matt, would you ever consider sharing an Instagram with me? You muted yourself.
We don't have that much. Like, We have some stuff in common, but I feel like if we shared an Instagram, it would be like some extremes of our personality. So I think it would be weird, but we might be able to make it work.
Well, it seems to me like Josh and John Wang-Kim share an Instagram. Like it's the Twin Dragons Instagram page. I don't know if they have like a third eye in the sky that's controlling it for them, but it is kind of weird. Now, if you look at it for Josh Wang-Kim, this is a guy that I absolutely love it. He's got a 15-1 amateur record, which is like the Muhammad Makayev types that really do have that extensive background. Darian Weeks is another guy that's come into the UFC with a very extensive IMMAF amateur background. But when you look at it for him, it culminated at Ortiz Liddell 3, a win over Johnny Robles. Matt, do you think Josh Wang-Kim thought, F it, this is the pinnacle. Like, I might as well become pro off this win?
Oh, yeah, nothing can stop me. I'm all the way up. You got Oscar De La Hoya and Tito Ortiz, Chuck Liddell in attendance. Like, it's the big time.
John Franklin's in attendance with Fight Night Picks. I better just throw it all out on the line. Now, for him, I mean, he only has one loss, LFA 127 due to legal elbows. He's in the clinch position. He's throwing them straight down. Frank Trigg was taking none of it, and he just ended the fight. Now, his opponent stepped back up, and he was ready to go. And Frank Trigg said, no mas, we're done. The fight's over. So for Wang Kim, again, a very diverse skill set, very, very good kickboxing, taking on the EFC and also former, and I want to throw it out there, Fight Star amateur champion Cameron Saaiman. If you look at it for him, very, very good with his wrestling, with his grappling. Obviously, we've seen EFC talent merge over into the UFC, have success. We saw it with a guy like Dricus du Plessis, former champ, higher weight classes. I mean, I can think of another fighter.
Don't say JP Bays, because it did not go well for him at all.
Yeah, JP, it didn't go as well, but former EFC champ there too. Matt, when we put these two guys together, obviously, if you look at it for Wang Kim and for Saaiman, not really the greatest level of competition for either guy. I mean, 19-29, the combined opponent record for Wang Kim, 16-18 for Saaiman, if you look at it that way. But they've been winning fights the way that you want to see them winning these fights. So what do you make of this match? Because I think this one's actually really tough.
It's kind of the weird thing about this fight. For Saaiman, I might project a higher ceiling for him, but it is a little weird that they do have the same level of experience, although one's only 21 years of age and the other fighter is almost 30. Like, those 10 extra years of experience are going to pay off at a certain point. And I do agree with you 100% with what you had brought up. Neither guy does have the greatest level of competition on their way up into the UFC. And this fight kind of reminds me, like, I don't know if you had any friends who like drew a lot growing up, but you know those like really complicated diagrams where it shows you how to draw really nice things, and it like starts out with a stick man with like the triangles and the circles and nothing, you can't really make sense of anything. Both these fighters are like the first step of that drawing. Like, they still have to be developed. They're still going to need a lot of fights. And I got to be honest, even if Josh Wang Kim is able to win, even with him being almost 30 years of age, it would be nice if he had a couple more fights, because I do like a lot of the well-roundedness from his game. He's someone who I do like on the ground because he is so slick. He moves very well. He has very active hips on the ground as well. He does have decent striking, but I feel like he could almost be thrown into a category with like a Ricky Tertios, where it's like, hey, you're really good at all this stuff, but you're not good enough at any single one area to really carry you over the hump. So I think this fight's going to be a very entertaining one, but I think this might be a weird fight where it's almost a disservice for the winner to get signed by the UFC, if that makes any sense.
Josh Wang Kim open a plus 241 on best fight odds. That line automatically corrected itself, minus 233 right now for Saaiman, plus 187. Does that surprise you at all? You muted yourself again. Oh boy.
I got to stop doing this. Not really, if I'm being honest, because for Wang Kim, I feel like he does have an answer for a lot of what Saaiman can bring at him. Like, I'm expecting Cameron to at least try to strike with him a little bit on the outside. He might eat some kicks if he does that. And then if he works his way on the inside, he could have success with his own wrestling. I'm sure he can. But I do feel like the overall grappling out of Josh Wang Kim is going to be able to get him out of some of those tricky situations if it does end up becoming sort of a grapple fest type of fight.
544 total votes on Tapology, 68% going with Josh Wang Kim to get the win in that one. We move on to our next fight, Matt. Erisson Fereira taking on Jesus Santos Aguilar. And when you look at this fight, Matt, it really is a tricky one. I mean, apparently I missed an R in Fereira, so we'll just, throw that one in the mistake column. But when you do look at it for Erisson Fereira, he missed weight, came in at 126.5. They gave him extra time to cut the extra weight. He made it 125.5. Didn't look great on the scale. He hasn't fought since last season of Contender Series. Got a win over Chu Lun. And if you went back and watched that fight, Dana White thought that he lost the fight. Michael Bisping thought that he lost the fight. Craig Allen thought that he lost the fight. I thought he did well in the first round. and then he started to slow. And then he'd get in these grappling exchanges, and you thought, oh, geez, he's going to do quite well in these spots. And then he didn't. So he's taking on a guy who is a very good grappler in Jesus Santos Aguilar, a guy who really has put it all together. And again, for some reason, my sick brain completely messed up Aguilar's record, who's not 5-0. He's 7-1. So we're just going to throw this one to the Wolves and go off of, what we can say about this fight. I think it's a good fight. It very much is a clash of styles. It should be fun while it lasts.
I was just about to say, this is Mike Goldberg's favorite fight on the whole entire card because we have a clash of styles. It should be a fun one, but it is the truth. Like, if Fereira can keep it on the feet, he's going to win. He is an extremely dangerous striker. He has legit power in his hands, too. I couldn't imagine fighting a 125er. Exactly, with that much power. Kind of reminiscent of like an earlier John Lineker from years past when he was in the UFC. The difference is you can hit John Lineker with a sledgehammer in the head and it doesn't affect him whatsoever. I do worry about Erisson's chin a little bit, just with the style that he does fight in, because he does invite the brawl so often. But if Aguilar can get it to the mat, I do expect him to have a decent level of success with it. I just don't know if that game plan is going to be good enough to really go out there and win 3 rounds. I think he can wrestle his way to a good round or 2, but at a certain point, I do think that he is going to face the much more powerful puncher in Fereira and Erisson, and I do think that's going to catch him at some point.
This isn't my pick of any of the fights. Jesus Santos Aguilar's got a win over a guy that we saw last week in Edgar Chairez or 2 weeks ago. That guy had a heck of a fight against Clayton Carpenter, and that was on super short notice for him. That was to keep his UWC belt. So we've seen a lot of fighters come in from UWC. Obviously, top of mind for me is always the tricky Panamanian striker that we've seen in Jocelyn Edwards, but there have been other UWC fighters here recently. Again, last time that we saw Aguilar fight was back in July of 2021, so it has been some time for him. And if you do look at it, coming out of Combate, I mean, we saw Yasmin Jauregui take about that amount of time off and look pretty damn good coming back. Same organization, and they both trained at Entonom Gym. So Aguilar is somebody to definitely watch out for, Matt. Comment section over on YouTube. JD, hey, what's up, guys? What's going on? Brady Gaming is Dana White's Contender Series tonight. It's tomorrow night. And MPTV, how many subs to do a Tough House breakdown? Matt, can you answer that?
Never. I'm telling you this right now. I'm never going to watch The Ultimate Fighter ever. I think it's a bad product at this point. Here's the thing. I'm just going to go on a mini rant here. Fast and Furious up until 5 was pretty good. And then there was just too many. It's too much content. The Ultimate Fighter up until season like 11 was pretty good. What season are we in right now? 38? Like, I just don't care at this stage. I'm sorry.
Contender Series is good fun, Matt. We move on to Amiran Gogoladze taking on Darius Flowers, and this is a big-time fight. Now, I look at this one, Matt, and I put it in my notes. I said, these two guys combined are probably the most seasoned fighters that we have on this episode, and I don't see why this isn't the main event over a couple of heavyweights that are 5-0 that haven't really fought the greatest level of competition. I mean, to me, these are the type of fights that they could just decide, okay, we're just going to throw these guys in the UFC anyway and see what happens on the prelims of a fight night card. And you're going to enjoy that fight. Like, I look at this fight, you have guys like, I mean, pick your fighters, like a couple of guys that are absolutely going to go out there and put on a good time. So for Darius Flowers, a guy that spent a lot of time at middleweight, the last time that he fought anywhere near welterweight was back in 2019, a catchweight at 173. His last welterweight fight was in 2018. He did have welterweight experience before that, but a middleweight, and you look at it, made weight successfully. Amiran Gogoladze also made the weight. He's the former GFC welterweight champ from back in June. 10 of his 14 wins are by finish. The other thing about him, too, combined opponents record, 80-29. It's pretty damn good. And to me, I went through it and I went, okay, well, he did lose in 2021, decision loss to Erisson Fereira, a guy who was on the PFL not that long ago. He also has a first-round knockout win in 2020 over Pavel Kusha, who I thought was pretty damn good before he went to the PFL. Didn't work out for him. Didn't work out. But that's a damn good win, especially if you're a striker going up against Kusha, who can really mix it up all over the place. I thought that was a really good one on his part. Now, obviously, we know that Flowers is much better when it comes to his takedowns. But when I look at this fight, Matt, this is a great fight at welterweight.
And I really don't think the takedowns are going to be that important for either guy, if I'm being honest. Like, Darius Flowers is probably going to fight this fight like a boxer, I would imagine. That's how he's fought the majority of his fights up until this point. So I do agree with you. I think he's probably the more likely of the two to get a takedown. I should say that. But I really don't think either guy's going into this fight really thinking, hey, I'm going to shoot double legs and single legs like I'm Chael Sonnen in 2011.
That's what Dana White wants. Wrestling.
Exactly. Especially in the last 30 minutes or in the last 30 seconds of an extremely exciting fight. Sorry, Brennan Locke name. But still, I think Flowers can have success if he gets on the inside, because the thing about Gogoladze is that he does require a lot of distance to set up some of his bigger kicks on the outside. And if you can get on the inside of a kicker, you force them to become a boxer. And I do favor the boxing of Darius Flowers if he is able to get it into that range. But the problem is Amiran's going to make him pay for it a lot on his way in. He's going to be able to kick the legs. He's going to be able to kick the body, set up his own boxing combinations. I think this fight's going to be an incredible fight, but this is the only weird thing about it. This is why I think they probably threw it on Contender Series. It would be weird if they were like, hey, we're going to give a guy who's 11-5 his UFC debut. Like, for Flowers, I think he's a talented fighter, but since his record is a little bit salty, I do feel like this is probably why they're throwing this fight on Contender Series and not just giving them like the opening of a fight night card. But I do agree with you. I could see a world where Darius Flowers can kind of get his career back together. He's only 27 years old. He could do like the Julian Erosa, if you will, like have a bit of a rough start to early start to his career.
And now you're fighting Hakeem Dawodu. Here you go.
Exactly. But for Gogoladze, I really do think that he is the much more, not only well-rounded fighter in this matchup, but his peaks are so much higher with his skill set. His kickboxing is absolutely insane. He can fight with single strikes. He can fight in combination. And that's a really nice thing to see out of a guy who's only 24 years of age, making his Contender Series debut.
Yeah, it's not like looking at some of these prospects that have come in on Contender Series that have nice records, but not a lot of experience. Like, I'm thinking like Melzik Bogdasaryan. This guy's such a good striker. You got to watch out for him, but his takedown defense isn't very good. But when you look at it for Amiran Gogoladze, his takedown defense isn't all that great. That's what scares you against a guy like Darius Flowers. In the comment section, Matt, bullies of today saying Flowers is here. I'm watching. Is this Darius Flowers? Is this you? We've got Gerald saying this is fight of the night. Hype MMA saying Darius looked amazing on the scales. What a matchup. The under hits, and Activate A talking about Amiran Gogoladze getting the win. I think it's going to be a very, very fun fight. It's a great one. It's the best match. They're the most seasoned fighters on the episode. And then it comes, Matt, to the main event. Eduardo Neves taking on Michael Parkin, or Mick Parkin, as it's been said and shown everywhere else. So, Matt, when I do look at this fight, this is probably the one where I did the most tape study. I wrote the most notes. I'm the most invested in, because I looked at that heavyweight fight where you had, what was it? Nice Aris FC champ take on my guy Cortez Acosta. And I thought, geez, this is a really good fight. These two guys, like, you know, Waldo Cortez Acosta, much more skilled. Power punching comes out of his opponent. And then I look at this fight on this week's episode, Neves taking on Parkin. These guys are polar opposites. Eduardo Neves coming out of that southpaw stance, he really does hit hard. He's got speed in his hands, and the thing that I really like, he throws from odd angles too. Like, he'll throw a shovel hook, jump into it, and then throw a left cross. I absolutely love what I've seen out of Neves, except he gets hit a lot, does not check leg kicks, and has wonky takedown defense. And against a guy like Mick Parkin, who's trained with Paul Craig, trained with Tom Aspinall, trained with Phil DeFries, you know that with all of those guys, he's going to work his jiu-jitsu and his wrestling. You see that in some of his fights, but he's really awkward when it comes to his takedowns because he gets reversed. But he's a big heavyweight that can sweep off the bottom. Now, can he do that against a guy who's 265 and Neves? That remains to be seen. If you look at it for Parkin, 7-0-1 the amateur record, 5-0 the pro record, but the combined opponent's record, his debut fights a guy who's 1-10. Then 2-17, then 2-3, then 7-7, then 6-9. Parkin hasn't fought a good level competition whatsoever. So that really is a big thing for him. And you have to kind of consider that when you do look at this one, because I think Mick Parkin is a very, very good fighter. I think he also has K1 experience. Now, I've seen him get into just a rock'em sock'em type of fight against Mario Costandi. And then he fought Zoma, and he got knocked out by a left hook, like springboard knocked out, like done. So for Parkin, pretty labored in his shots. For Neves, he is the more, I guess, selective of his shots. But these two guys really do throw down. I think it's going to be a good fight while it lasts.
It should be a fun fight, but it's so weird that the UFC still considers the heavyweight to be like this weird legacy division where they're like, hey, heavyweights on the main card, they should probably be the co-main event or the main event. Like the next UFC card, we were talking about this. Like, why on God's green earth is Cyril Gane and Tai Tuivasa fighting on top of Marvin Vettori and Robert Whittaker? Makes no sense to me whatsoever. And I very much feel the same way about tomorrow's main event compared to the co-main event, because I couldn't agree more with you. Why isn't Gogoladze versus Flowers the main event in this? That's an incredible fight between two guys who show a very high level skill set, even though Flowers might not have the best record. Still, if you watch what he's able to do in the cage, he's very high level with it. I think Eduardo is going to win this fight any single way it goes, though, if I'm being completely honest. I do think Parkin's the better grappler. Don't get me wrong. He has the better wrestling. He's very heavy on top. And like you said, he does have a good ability to kind of float even for a bigger guy in the heavyweight division with his jiu-jitsu. I just don't think he has anything to offer Eduardo on the feet, if we're being honest. At the close range, I think he is going to eat a lot of shots in the clinch. That's something Eduardo is pretty good at. He can throw some elbows in there, get kind of dirty with his knees too. I don't mean dirty in a bad way. I just mean he's kind of filthy with it. He's good with them. And I just don't know what Parkin's going to do if he isn't able to get that takedown. And even if he is able to wrestle his way to a round one victory, let's say, is that going to help him more than it hurts him? Because his cardio is a little bit suspect as fights go late. And against a guy like Eduardo, who does carry his power deep into fights, he's not just one of these heavyweights who can only get a knockout really early. I do worry about Parkin and just how is he going to have sustained levels of success in this matchup?
Cardio, I wouldn't say is a strong suit of either of these fighters. I like Neves.
True.
I've seen him in fights. Like if you go back and watch, and I want to make sure that I get this one right. It was one of his early pro fights. You can find it on YouTube because you can watch his fight against Andre Vieira, who was 5-0 at UFC 126. That was one of those
LFA
fights that they had
126.
in Brazil. LFA 111 was in Brazil as well. That was the first Brazilian LFA card. But if you go watch his fight against John Lourenço, where he wins by doctor stoppage, he's on top and he's kind of hammering away in the third round and his opponent's face is all cut up. That was one of those ones that could have kind of gone either way, and he didn't look all that good at the start. But again, he was 19
a guy
at the
making
time.
his debut against someone who's 3-3 is pretty good.
He's 22 years old. Like, that's the craziest part about it. He does not look 22 at all. I mean, like maybe 22-year-old. I don't know.
Think about this, Craig. Let's say his career is successful at the UFC level. He could fight in the UFC for 15 years.
Imagine.
You know what I mean?
Wild
Like,
stuff.
it's not often that you do see heavyweights this young in their career being able to make the jump to the UFC, because what's the big thing about heavyweights? It's that you carry your power late, and in the heavyweight division, power is supreme, so the fighters get a lot older. If everything does work out for Eduardo, he could be around for decades, which is kind of wild to say.
Yeah, and if you get the chance, like if you're watching this, listening to this on YouTube, and I mean, I see Deadly saying Mick Parkin for the win over on YouTube. Pablo saying I like the new screen for Dana White's Contender series. And a lot of people giving Flowers some props and some saying Flowers, you go for that takedown and maul him. He definitely should. But when it does come to this one, Matt, I think it's going to be a really fun fight. The last thing I wanted to say for Parkin in his fight against, it was one of his last fights. It was his fight against Fatih Aktas. He walked out to Firestarter by The Prodigy, which was probably the hardest hitting UK dance song I've ever heard in my life. And I don't dance in that lane, Matt. I don't dance in that lane.
You regret it now, though, don't you? They seem to be having quite a bit of fun.
It went way too hard for me, but a good win right there. So it should be a fun one. The fan vote on this one, 86% of 567 total votes going with Neves to get the win. He's also a pretty big favorite, -256. So a lot of big favorites on this card, which isn't always the way that it goes on Dana White's Contender Series. The other thing that Dana will say is, let's say Matt and I are fighting each other. Matt's a -500 favorite, and I'm a plus 300. Would be. And I beat Matt. Dana would go, hey, he was a 500-1 dog, and he beat him. That's not how that works. But he says it every week.
I love when people don't understand odds and gambling, and they're like, he's a +300. He's the favorite, right? It's like, no, not at all.
But when it does come down to this one, Matt, we got to make one pick each. We don't know what each other's picks are going to be. We've run long on this show because we're away from each other. Matt, what's your pick this week?
A bit of a weird pick because he did miss weight, but I got to be honest. I think Erisson Fereira is going to absolutely destroy Aguilar. I think he's got big power on the feet. I like the way that he moves too with his boxing. Maybe destroy is a bit of an exaggeration, but I really do think that if we get the best version of him tomorrow, again, weight miss is a bit of a concern, or at least the weight concerns concern me, but I do like him to get the win tomorrow night.
Going with Fereira, it did scare me with the weight miss, and I thought he looked good again that first round
I
against
like the
two.
tape study. And he just seems UFC ready to me because he does have a good foundational skill set. And it doesn't feel like he has to add too many parts to his game. You know what I mean? Like he could go into the UFC with this type of a game plan. Might not get him into the top 15, but it's at least good enough to stick around for a while.
To me, I mean, kind of torn on a couple of different fighters. Denise Gomes, obviously, she's taking on Amanda or Rayanne Amanda. That's a fight where, yeah, I mean, Gomez coming out of PRVT seems like that gym's really making moves and starting grooves in the lower weight classes. You'd think that she's going to get the win, but it is a tight one. I'm going to go with Amiran Gogoladze. I mean, I absolutely loved what I saw, and I'm sorry, Darius Flowers, if you want to call me out on the program, you can do so. If you get the win on Dana White's Contender Series, Darius, you can air that out to the whole world. Go on the post-fight speech, say Craig Allen was against me, didn't think I was going to win. That's fair. Amiran Gogoladze, I absolutely love the complete skill set. So Darius, if you're watching out there, I apologize. I have no ill will against you. If you'd like to come on the program, so be it. I think that's going to be a great one. And I was also partial to Neves as well, taking on Parkin. But I'm going to go with Gogoladze. You're going with Fereira. Let us know in the comments section who you have. He says you will be sorry tomorrow. Sorry, Darius. It's just the way that it goes. Matt, I think this is going to be a big time card.
Darius, we think you're going to win fight of the night. I know they don't give that bonus out, but I'm still more excited for your fight than anyone else's.
I think it's going to be a great one as well. So thanks so much for tuning in with the Contender Series videos. Not this coming weekend, but the weekend after. We have that UFC Paris card. You have Gone taking on Tuivasa in the main event. Robert Whittaker taking on, a big time fighter in Martin Vettori in the co-main. There's some weird fights for a main card, like Roman Kopylov taking on Alessio Di Chirico. That's a bit of
the main and co-main event are like borderline pay-per-view, like main event, co-main events. Like Whittaker Vettori is as good of a middleweight fight as you can make right now. And Cyril Gane had the weirdest performance of his lifetime his last time out against Francis Ngannou. Got out wrestled by a poor wrestler, even though, well, I guess now he isn't. And for Tai Tuivasa, he's just been proving people wrong time after time after time. Got cut by the UFC, got brought back. Like, it's a wild story for Tuivasa and his rise to the top right now. So I'm really excited for that main event.
Yeah, it should be a great one. So make sure you check that one out. That'll be all the way in the future, not this weekend, but next. It should be a great one. Enjoy Contender Series tomorrow night. Good luck, Darius, in your fight. Prove me wrong against Gogoladze. Matt, it should be a great one. You're going to want to keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. And as we always say, let's get into it.